So if you're just tuning in and you want to know what this Aetherion Max is all about, basically it's a brand new ultra short throw projector from AWOL, same company that brought you the crazy Valerian Max that everybody is oohing and awing about. And so this is their new product and it has a lot of the same features and functionality as their Valerian products. Okay, so this is Joe and Tell. I usually review lots of home theater products, and that includes projectors, ultra short throw, like this one. And so I have some basis to compare this one to. So for full disclosure, this is a sponsored video, but I did receive this product prior to making this arrangement. So I originally started reviewing this. So anybody who's thinking maybe I'm biased, this review was done prior to any of that discussion, just because it kind of came randomly in the mail. And so either case, it's up to you to decide whether you trust me or not. But whatever I do when it comes to these reviews, I have to maintain my honesty because the most important thing to me is your trust. So let's quickly just dive into the specs. So one key aspect is that this is a 3300 ISO lumen projector. It has some of the same technology that the Valerian uses for enhanced black level, EBL. They claim that this can project up to a 200-inch image, and we'll get into that later. It does have their anti-RBE function. Some people have issues with that. Anti-RBE is supposed to address that. It's also Dolby Vision compatible, 3D compatible, and it has dynamic tone mapping. They claim a fast response time of 1 millisecond. Now, some of the other ones are starting to have more of the features where it does enhance the contrast, using dynamic iris, dynamic dimming, and things like that. And this is supposed to do that as well. So it's about on par when it comes to those features. But the truth is, all that matters is how it actually performs, not what it says on the specs. All right, so when I first unboxed this thing, the first thing I noticed was that this is a very different look as far as aesthetics. It is mostly made out of some kind of aluminum, and it's very angular, kind of reminds me of some kind of Lamborghini. And so that is very different, has a laser light that comes on the front, LED light. And when the actual picture came onto the screen, I was like, whoa, this is pretty bright. And the other thing I noticed, as with other Valerian and other products from their new line, it is very fast to turn on. The actual speed of operation, everything was very smooth. If you know me, that's very important to me as far as getting into menus and things like that, because I'm often changing things. And so overall, picture quality, I just noticed that it was very bright, vibrant. I'm usually looking for fan noise that's overly loud, and that's not something that I noticed with this one. So the camera's about 1.5 feet away. Let me go ahead and turn it on. So that was my first impression. After a bit more testing, I did notice, because this is an early version, this is a pre-production sample, I did notice that there was some issues with their EBL where it would kind of like shift up and down. They sent me a firmware update and that completely resolved that issue. And overall, after this update that they sent me, the colors, the contrast was all pretty impressive, better than what I saw initially. So in my initial testing, I did have this in the bedroom that is using a 1.5 gain CLR screen. And so it's a Fresnel screen, and it did look noticeably brighter than what I had there prior. Almost to the point where in my bedroom, I don't know that I would need it that bright, because I was coming from an OLED TV where the issue was that it was bright and lighting up the walls and almost like disturbing my wife if she's sleeping. And so I wanted a large screen, but I also didn't want it to the point where it's just lighting up the entire room. This one definitely can tell that it was a 3300 lumen projector. I was using it on a 100-inch screen. They claim that it can do up to 200, so I took it downstairs to the garage where I was using it on a 150-inch screen. And their claim of 200 inches, I believe that it possibly could do that and still keep the edges clear. That's kind of the issue, that you need a very bright projector, but you also need one that maintains the corner sharpness. I believe it could do that. But the one thing to remember is that a 200-inch 16:9 screen, not a scope screen, would be about 8 feet in height, which means that you probably are gonna need a pretty high ceiling, higher than a typical 9-foot ceiling, because you're gonna need about maybe 2 feet up, right? So you're gonna need some distance between this projector and the screen, and you're gonna need about 3 feet. So you're gonna have to move that back. So could it do 200 inches? I would say yes, but is it probable in most cases? I don't know. It's gonna really depend on your room and whether you can accommodate that sort of setup. So this does have their noir scene, which includes their dynamic laser dimming. They call it EBL, and that after their firmware update works as well as it does on my Valerian Pro 2 and Valerian Max that has the most recent firmware versions. Now it also has 7 levels of iris. It is not dynamic. It's something that you would change manually, but I did notice that it's able to make the black level a little bit lower. So I prefer to use it around level 4. I did notice that when I started moving it up to the higher levels that there was some color shift, so I preferred not to keep it on max. 4 was about right in my particular situations, but I would love to see this be dynamic in the future. I think it's possible. So for a lot of people, the RBE rainbow effect is an issue for them. Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately for me, I don't notice that. Unfortunately, I can't test that. Okay, now regarding HDR, Dolby Vision, and dynamic tone mapping, these guys are some of the best at tuning these because I don't feel the need to buy any external type of device to provide this dynamic tone mapping, things like that. I think it does an excellent job of doing those things, and surprising for a projector with all of this stuff built in. Okay, so regarding the sound quality of the built-in speakers, you know me, I review audio products and I have a crazy system. So I would say that if you're gonna have a 150-inch screen, you're probably gonna want a sound system to match. But I did test the built-in speakers and actually they were surprisingly good. I think for a lot of people who are used to a soundbar, this would be very similar to what they would expect, minus some of the ones that have external sub. This doesn't play as deep, but I would say better than what I've heard from most TVs, which is not a high bar. Now it also has 7 levels of iris. It is not dynamic. It's something that you would change manually. I did think that the sound was pretty good, and they had some pretty good immersive effects because they do have Dolby Atmos as well. Okay, now regarding the built-in OS, some of the other projectors I've reviewed don't have one, so I have to plug in an Apple TV or an NVIDIA Shield. And what I would say is all of these little things that don't seem to matter a lot add up. So the Google TV operating system on this is actually very usable on its own. I might still plug in an external device, but I don't really feel the need to. This supports Netflix, Disney Plus, YouTube, Plex, all of these things, and I'm able to use it directly on this, and the navigation and responsiveness is very fast, so probably faster than many of the devices that you'd find out there. And so if you were to just use the built-in OS, I think you'd have a very good time with it. All right, so a few of the extra details. This has all the ports that you could possibly want here on the back. You can take a look. And it also has a motorized dust cover, which I think is handy. I reviewed a previous BenQ projector where it had a motorized dust cover covering the entire thing. And it was kind of cool that something would move while a motorized projector screen would move up as well. This is a little bit different in that it's just a tiny screen that covers just the lens, which is pretty smart because you don't really need to cover the entire thing, just the lens portion. And so that does work. It does make a funny little sound. Kind of sounds like a little insect or something. Anyway, take a listen. I need to compare these quickly versus other USTs that I've previously reviewed, like the Nexigo that I currently use in the bedroom. That one I like because it has very good black levels. I would say I'd have to do a side by side, but I think that that one might edge it out, just because it does have dynamic iris. So if they can figure that out on this, I think that it could possibly beat it. But as of right now, that one has dynamic iris, this one does not. So I would say this one comes close, but that doesn't mean that the contrast is equal, because the brightness on this one at 3300 lumens versus the other one that's about 2000, this one is so much brighter that the perceived contrast, when there's something bright on the screen and something dark, something happens to my eyes where I'm almost like blinded by the brightness, and the black level relative to that looks dark. But if I test a Starfield scene where it's mostly black, I can tell that the other one does have a lower black floor. Now, compared to the AWOL LTV 3500 Pro, that one, I believe they claimed was 3000 lumen, and they look about the same. If you were to ask me if I could tell a difference in brightness, I don't know that I could, but I definitely could tell that this one has a lower black floor. Now, the BenQ V7050i is an older UST single laser, and this one just kind of blows that one out of the water in every way as far as startup speed, brightness, and black level. Overall, it's just a whole different level. The only thing I will give to the BenQ is that they did have a very good color accuracy because they were pre-calibrated from the factory. Now, the colors on this aren't bad whatsoever, but I would say that the accuracy I would give to the BenQ. Now, I think one of the most interesting comparisons would be to compare the Aetherion Max to the Valerian Max and the Valerian Pro 2, because those are long throw projectors, but they seem to operate in similar ways. I don't know if they're using a lot of the same internals, but the speed of operation, the EBL on them, the tuning, all seem very similar. Even when it comes down to the remote, this one has a slightly different remote, just the color, but the feel is very similar as well. Almost all the functions are indistinguishable from the Valerian products, and the picture quality is very similar as well. So I would say that the Valerian Max and the Aetherion Max are very close. It's just that one is an ultra short throw, and depending on your use case, you may want one over the other. So I think maybe for a dedicated theater, I would still opt for something like the Valerian Max, because you can mount it further back, you can project onto a larger screen, and you don't have to worry about where that thing is placed near it. And like I said earlier about the limitation of height when it comes to bigger screens, that's not as much of a concern because the Valerian Max does have vertical lens shift. Comparing it directly to the Pro 2, I would say that this does look brighter, and it also has better black levels than the Pro 2, just because this one does have manual iris control. So if I were to leave them both wide open, I think the black level would be similar on both of them, and the Aetherion might edge it out. I don't know. I don't have the test equipment to verify that. I'm just kind of going based on memory. So to quickly wrap things up, pros and cons, I would say, starting with the cons, it doesn't have dynamic iris. It's something that I've always wanted on these because I think that it might be possible. Another con is maybe the look. I kind of like the way it looks. Kind of looks like my background here, but for some people, it may or may not fit their decor because of the sharper lines. There's very few cons that I can say about this. As of right now, it's on Kickstarter for $21.99, which is crazy. Now, when it jumps up in price, it's going to be tough because new projectors are going to come out, and it's going to be tough to compare those at the regular price versus those at whatever price they're at. The value proposition right now is very high considering the feature set. As far as its ability to stay sharp and have good colors and have good brightness and overall a great picture and great experience, I think it has all of those things. My experience with Valerian is that they're continually trying to improve, and so I trust that they're gonna come out with future firmware and software updates that will improve the performance. They didn't have to add anti-RBE to their old projectors. They could have just kept it on the Max, but they did. So things like that make me trust them as a company. And of course, they're a newer company, so not everything was perfect, but I think that the way they're handling things and trying their best seems to me like a company that I would want to support in the future. All right, so overall conclusion, who is the Aetherion Max for, and who may want to choose something else? I would say this is for somebody who wants to use an ultra short throw projector in like a living room situation where you don't want to mount a projector randomly and have to run a long wire. You're trying to keep a simple setup, and you have the space to put, let's say, a cabinet in the front, and you want to keep it as simple as possible. And now in combination with a CLR or ALR screen, ambient light rejecting screen, you can have the lights on, and this is going to be bright enough to overcome a lot of that. And if you turn off all the lights, it still has good enough contrast for you to enjoy it and have a good cinematic experience. So kind of does all of the things you want, and it's fast enough to use as an everyday thing where it's not a big deal to turn this thing on and use it like you would a TV. And so maybe someone looking for a large TV-like experience that may want to get something that's over 100-inch, $2,000 plus a screen, you're right there. So yeah, I would say skip this if you're looking for the absolute best black levels, because if you can mount a TV, that's probably going to give you more brightness and better contrast. And, you know, a lot of them are getting pretty large in size. But if you want one that's 150, I mean, that's not really doable for most people because of the price. With this, you can do that. So that's it. If you have any additional questions that I didn't answer, leave them in the comments below. I'll do my best to answer all of them. If you like the video, make sure to like, subscribe, ring the bell to be notified when I upload new videos, and watch these other ones that are similar. Thanks for watching.